Good afternoon and welcome to the Cover One Day 2 breakdown of the 2023 Buffalo Bills training camp. You are joining Greg Thompson, Eric Turner, and Mike Bunt. Gentlemen, today was a little damper. I think but another great day. Eric, how was it nice being out there for day 2?
Yeah, the weather. It was obviously a factor. It was a steady rain, which it's a good thing to see how the team reacts and see some of the movement from some of the players. So a little rainy. I think we lost some product, Greg, but we didn't have to reapply because that's how much product we use, right?
So looking all right.
Yeah, it was great to be back at St. John Fisher. Obviously, like you guys mentioned, the rain was a little bit of a damper, but it went, and then they were able to get on with practice. So it was a good time just to be back out there with the fans and seeing the team in action.
So what initially stood out to you, Eric?
Yeah, obviously, as I said, the weather was a factor. So seeing how some of these guys move, that's the smoothness of Kincaid.
Yes.
Shakir, they plant differently. They have their center of gravity under them when they're making these cuts in that nasty weather. So that was kind of cool to see initially. Again, this is one of those first obstacles. We had the heat yesterday, now you have the rain today. And it was a different tempo, I thought, because of it. But it was good to see some of that movement when you're talking offense and defensive players.
How about you, Mike?
For me, it's just exciting to see all the youngsters, the new faces on the team. Obviously, watching guys like Dalton Kincaid for the first time, some of the free agent additions, guys like Deontay Hardy, Leonard Floyd, and just seeing where these guys are going to fill in on this roster. Are they going to be instant contributors, or are they going to be guys that are going to have to earn their stripes?
Mm-hmm. And I love the point you made about the smoothness and the conditions. There was a couple of steps where for the route you were counting the steps that Kincaid was taking, and a thing that a lot of fans wouldn't notice or you don't pay attention to, anytime guys are getting ready to like break down at the top of their stem, you don't know they're going to be in cut, out cut, is going to be a post or a slant way, whatever they might be doing. Dalton Kincaid doesn't have to take that extra step that most people have to take to like regain balance or push off. He just continues through the motion and keeps moving. So when we talk about like smoothness, that a lot of people don't understand what that translates to. The reason he doesn't have to slow down is he doesn't have to take any extra steps.
Right.
And he's able to continue through. And it was just that one little instance, it clicked for me to see that big, that's why he's not wasting any extra movement or any extra steps. That's how he's able to continue to move so quickly through those things and not decelerate where he keeps going. Maybe the corner or the nickel or the safety has to take that extra step to like check where he's at. Right. That's how he kind of pulls away a little bit. It just clicked in that moment watching that.
Yeah, and you can see it, during that segment, I think they were running either 5 or 7 step, slants. So in breaking routes, and he was just one of those guys, like you said, that was so smooth at the top of that route. Some of the other tight ends down the depth chart, I won't name anyone, but you saw those extra steps or on those dig routes, those in breaking routes, right? So that is something to notice and pay attention to when you are watching the game or you're watching some of these practices.
Did anything else stick out scheme-wise that you noticed as they were getting ready for things?
I mean, it's kind of a play on an add-on from yesterday, right? Movement. But specifically for me, it was the type of movement. So there's shifting, there's trades, there's motion. It was third down heavy today, so it was a lot of third and medium, third and long situations, third and short as well. I mean, they did all different levels of third down plays. And you said it was damn near 100% some type of movement on every single play. I would agree with that. But specifically for me, it was the type of trades that we saw. There were some cool formations where they came out with almost like an inverted wishbone out of the shotgun. They call it a diamond formation. So you got the quarterback in shotgun, 2 guys to his right and left, and then a guy behind him, all right? So like an inverted wishbone. And then all of a sudden, Josh throws his hand signal out, and they go ahead and shift in this 12 personnel look into a 3-by-1 set. Saw a really nice catch by Stephon Diggs. So it was
even doing some of the opposite, brought another one back where they're empty set.
Right.
They come back, and all of a sudden, Gabe Davis is the one that's 5 yards behind Josh.
Right. Or
crazy.
Running a draw to cook off of that, again, being out wide, being spread, and then bring it in. So, yes, we saw a lot of, pre-snap movement, motion. You better, because it's third down situations all day today. But the shifting is what's going to really challenge a defense. You got to think about it, right? They have to adjust to the formation after that shift, but then post-snap, they're also running motion right before the snap, and then they're having to adjust on the fly. So that was what stood out today.
And I love the way you described that earlier in that it wasn't just the standard definition of pre-snap motion. Because like you said, if you have multiple guys moving, you have to get set before the snap. So we saw a lot of that with the trades, with moving guys from, hey, these three are here. We had a couple where there was 12 personnel, and you had Knox and Kincaid off to the right side. Knox was the inline man, or Kincaid was the inline man, was hand in the ground, and Knox was the wing. And then all of a sudden he shifts into the backfield next to Josh, and they ran an inside
and they handed
draw
it up to him.
Knox. And you saw so many plays last year. If anybody watched the replays that have been on NFL Network recently, you show like last year's Rams game, last year's Titans game. Dawson Knox was in the backfield a lot because he'd be the extra helper on Aaron Donald and Jeffrey Simmons. Well, if you're doing that all the time and he's only ever a blocker, it's never in the defense's mind. If just once or twice you actually hand him the ball, that's now an extra wrinkle you have to have in your mind. You have to be prepared for that.
Caught us off guard, right? It was 3rd and 4. We're like, we did not see that coming.
So I love the fact that there was the trades and swaps of actual moving the formations, and then you still also had some of the traditional pre-snap motion with the jet motion, with the movement, being able to get guys at the defender's eyes moving just that little bit before the play. We saw that a lot early last year. Then it really reduced a lot later in the season, and everybody was speculating why. Seeing that back, and like you said, darn close to 100% of the snaps, you just warmed my heart.
Yeah, I love to see it. What was one of the things that we talked about all offseason, even late last year? We kept questioning where was the creativity to this offense. Yes, they were good enough to get things done because you have Josh Allen as your quarterback, but now that you're seeing some of that motion pre-snap, you have guys that can do creative things. Bringing in a guy like Deontay Hardy that adds, I don't want to say gimmicky because that kind of downplays his role, but a guy that can bring a different dimension to the offense. And then now having Dalton Kincaid where you're running that 12 personnel, there's just so much more that on a snap-by-snap basis you can present challenges to an opposing defense. And that is really how I think they take the leap from being already elite to maybe unstoppable at times this upcoming season.
So I know someone asked it. I was doing a thread of different things we were spotting out. Somebody asked me about how much it felt like the mix was between 12 and 11 personnel. Yesterday, it almost felt like there could have been more 12 than 11. Today, my gut said it was closer to 50-50 or maybe even a slight notch to 11. But the fact that we're not sure is fantastic. The fact that there's enough 12 personnel that we're not sure which one there was more of. I love that idea that the first 2 days, that's a huge part of this offense and we're going to see it going forward.
Right. And I like that point because, the big plays today, there's some to Diggs, but it went to the tight end, right? Yeah. I mean, Morris had a big post route over the middle, one-handed snag. Dawson Knox down the seam for a touchdown. Kincaid on a deep over route. I mean, I don't know if it was man coverage, but Rapp was the closest guy. He left him in the dust. Yeah. And that probably would have been a touchdown. So
it turned upfield maybe at least 50 yards.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. And so to see those guys making the big plays, I thought, that's great, even though, again, they weren't in 12 personnel as often as yesterday. But there are also some cool formational groupings that we saw. There were times where they had 2 tight ends out there and no running backs. Yeah. And they brought on the extra receiver. So some of that creativity that Mike was alluding to, we're starting to see some of it now. Again, it's training camp, so they do have to carry it into the season, but it's nice to see that the first couple of days.
I don't even know what I'll call. Is that like 0-2 for me? What do you even call it?
It is 0-2, yeah.
Hey. So who are some other players that stood out to you, Mike?
So we're starting with the offense. So most of the guys I have in my mind are defensive guys. Sure. For not as good reason today, I would say Khalil Shakir had some struggles. He had a drop that led to a Terrell Bernard interception, and I don't want to be too harsh.
The other one was behind him. That one
wasn't on him.
So but people were saying he dropped a bunch. There was at least one that was on him.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Stephon Diggs. Whenever he's out there, he's going to showcase. So you don't really get brownie points for pointing out Stephon Diggs is having himself a day. But he had a couple nice catches, including one on a slant that might have gone for 6. So it was the guys that you normally would expect that stood out to me today.
So some minor ones. Damian Harris is a little quicker than I expected him to be. I don't know, I obviously watched Patriots games and I understood the kind of player he was. I think I had a little more plotting in my mind. He was a little quicker. His feet were better than I expected. First team offense, the very first snap, Osiris Torrance was in at guard. I love to see that. We talked about that on yesterday's show where we're going to see a rotation that's going to come up on defense here in a moment. I love the fact that Torrance was in there first snap. So that's seems to be a pretty genuine competition with him and Bates because and Bates was right back in there.
Yeah.
Some other ones, but there were immediately giving him an opportunity. So I think that when the pads come on, that'll be something to see. And, obviously being able to see some of the other pieces, we're going to talk about some of the success of the defense here in a bit. The depth on the offensive line was a low light for me. A lot of stuff where they struggled in either timing out of their sets, a lot of slow pass sets, and a lot of miscommunication back and forth that led to some challenges.
Yeah, and I'll agree with that low light because you saw free rushers coming off the edge at times at Josh Allen, where some of these big plays, as we'll talk about, some of these big plays probably don't even count.
Yeah, might not have
because Josh
actually
is
happened.
taking off, and it probably is a huge gain, but these big passes down the field, I think that, some of those probably were negated by a possible actual sack or just a rush.
You saw Eric Washington and some of the defensive linemen calling for them to call a sack. We had them.
Yeah, they did some cool things on the defensive side to get those free rushers, and that is the positive that we'll spin on the defensive side.
So why don't you lead us off with who stood out on defense?
So defensively, I thought the corner room had a solid day. I know Bills fans aren't high on Dane Jackson, but he did get the number one reps, and he looked solid in his opportunity there. And even beyond Dane Jackson, when Benford was out there, Christian Benford
the first team
was impressive. Kyer Elam had some solid plays. Poyer had an impressive interception. So I thought this was a day really where the defense was the better of the two units. As you guys said earlier, some of the plays that the Bills did make on offense probably wouldn't have happened. The defensive line had themselves a solid performance. Granted, taking advantage of some backups on the offensive line. But the one thing that really did stand out to me at the very beginning of practice was that you had Terrell Bernard getting opportunity with the number ones over Tyrell Dodson. I know yesterday when Vaughn had spoken in the press conference, it led some to think that, well, is there even a competition going on at middle linebacker? Well, after 2 days, there definitely is at this point.
Yeah, and he stood out. I thought he flashed a bunch
today. He was my number one.
Especially, obviously a lot of passing today, so he's going to excel at that area. And they are sending the linebackers on rushes a little more, and you're seeing, and this was my biggest takeaway from today on the defensive side schematically, is you're seeing Epinesa, you're seeing these defensive ends, Floyd, drop out in the coverage, and they're sending those guys off the edge, and some of those simulated and creeper pressures, which we know is a thing in this defense, but again, today was third down, so you got some of those exotic looks and defensive structures, and they got free runners at the quarterback on some of these plays that, again, we were kind of touting big plays down the field. So that, to me, was the biggest standout. You saw some really cool schematic wrinkles when it comes to bringing guys off the edge, dropping guys out that aren't traditional guys in coverage out in space, and they looked good. They looked like the part. They looked like outside linebacker-ish rather than just pure defensive ends, and I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to send four, but which four are coming now? They need to, kind of mix that up a little more so that it's not a gimme in these third down situations.
So for any fans who aren't sure what Eric just described there, that's what the term simulated pressure means, where it looks like a blitz because, it's Taylor Rapp coming off the edge. It's Terrell Bernard.
There's 5-6 guys near the line of scrimmage initially.
And then you see a non-defensive lineman rush the quarterback. So in your mind, that equates to blitz. But if you're only sending 4 guys, it's still drop 7, bring 4. That's the base of our defense. If you don't know which 4 it is, and it's 3 defensive linemen with Taron Johnson off the edge, and Leonard Floyd drops out, that's called a simulated pressure or a simulated blitz because you're still only bringing 4. It's not an actual blitz. You're bringing those and being able to drop out, and I think we'll see even more of that.
And that's what I mean by schemed it up, because they're attacking simulated and creeper pressures, attacked protections. The Bills defensive line, the Bills defensive coaches had the offensive line's number today, and I think that's why overall I would agree with you. The defense kind of won the day.
A couple other names that stood out here. We talked about Gregory Rousseau yesterday. Again, he is noticeably thicker. Like that is, he is looking really healthy for this year. Again, Terrell Bernard was one of the top ones for me. I liked seeing his movement in space. It was really encouraging. I think a lot of people know obviously what Dotson brings to the table coming forward, coming downhill in the run game, maybe some questions in the pass protection. that's where Bernard would have a chance to win this job. If he's going to overtake that, it's going to be showing he's a sizable step up in coverage. Again, we talked yesterday, Dorian Williams, I'd kind of held out some hope they'd give him a shot. It seems all to be on the will, all seems to be outside. He seems to be more special teams and backup at this point, and would, unless something changes. And then the rotations everywhere else seem to be pretty normal. Again, the very first snap was Christian Benford. Dane Jackson was right back in. Kyrie Elam did get a couple reps with the first team, so it wasn't none, but he was definitively third out of those three guys when it was with the first team.
Yeah, I think the first segment, though, was Dane.
Yeah,
it was Dane. The second team segment, I think that's when Benford was in with Trey.
Okay. So seeing, again, they were rotating there. It was always Trey on the one side and then rotated the other three guys. So, it's good to see them there, but Dane Jackson got the first opportunity. Yesterday, and then today, even rotation, he was still back in.
I know. Mike and I talked about it, at practice today. It seems like he is it. He's the cornerback the first couple of days. It's like his job to lose than an actual true competition.
I have to admit, I feel like I was wrong going into camp, assuming that it was Kyrie Elam's job to lose, because Jackson, like you said, he started with the ones, and you were seeing Elam and Benford a lot with the second unit. So
down later.
You didn't see Dane as much. I don't know if Dane had practiced at all with the second unit, but it seemed like it's definitely Dane's job to lose heading into camp.
It's early. You never know. It's early.
And there's more things that'll come, as obviously we've come out here the last 2 days. A lot of caveats. There's no pads. So any of the offensive and defensive line things are really tough to be able to take a lot away from. We like the movement of the defensive line, but the offensive line's at a big disadvantage when you don't have pads, you don't have full contact. There's some pieces there. So it will be interesting to see how those things come forward. I liked our question yesterday was, would we see rotation today? So seeing Osiris Torrance get a chance to the first team, seeing Bernard be the first linebacker out there, seeing a little rotation, but it might be telling that the very first snaps were Bernard at linebacker, Torrance at guard, but Jackson was the first one out there. That might be a little difference of some of the other rotations.
Yeah, and the other rotation that hasn't been really talked about is Epinesa Floyd.
Yeah,
Epinesa was one of the early guys with the first team today. And so that is a competition that maybe a lot of us haven't really talked about enough. And maybe it's just a true competition when really I assumed that Floyd would be the guy. But they obviously love Epinesa, and he's been trending in the right direction. And he flashed again today, as I said, as a rusher and guy dropping into coverage. So it'll be interesting to watch that competition unfold now, because it's not one that we've talked about a lot.
And I think in people's minds, most people had him as the top guy of the bottom three.
Sure.
When you talk about Epinesa, Basham, and Lawson, and maybe he's the bottom guy of the top three with Floyd, Groot, and Epinesa. Maybe he's more. Maybe they see him like maybe he's separating himself a little bit from Basham and Lawson, and that he's more like, no, he's actually going to be fully rotating with Floyd and so early on. And then it'll be interesting when Von comes back, how much is that impacted? But it was definitely noticeable how much he was higher on the pecking order than Basham and Lawson for sure.
And I think that the big caveat is, again, no pads.
Yeah.
Now, tomorrow, usually day 3 is when they throw the pads on. I'm not sure if they announced that yet, but that's when you start watching, the cream of the crop when it comes to the DNs. How are they stopping the run? Seeing Floyd and Epinesa in that regard is going to be interesting to watch.
So let's close out here. Just some final thoughts on anything from today and what you're hoping for to see later on in camp.
Yeah, I just thought it was a solid day of practice overall. I like the competition back and forth. Obviously, I'm giving an advantage to the defense today, but that's a normal thing early on in training camp. So it's going to go back and forth. It's just exciting that these positional battles that we are talking about, we're not talking about a noticeable drop-off. We're talking about solid players where you go either direction, you're going to feel good about who you have there. I know fans, we talked about the corner room. Whether it's Elam, Jackson, Christian Benford, you're going to have a solid guy as your number 2 across from Trey White. Same thing with the defensive end battle right there that you were talking about. Leonard Floyd, AJ Epinesa, I think you're going to be okay until Von returns. So just my final takeaway from day 2 is it's exactly what I thought going into camp. This is a highly talented team, probably the most talented team on paper that the Bills have had over the course of Josh Allen's time. And that depth is really showing when you can go into the number 2s and still see guys that realistically could start on other teams across this league.
Yeah, my takeaway, there were some interceptions, right? We talked about there were some turnovers, obviously something you don't want to see. But again, let's talk about the context. They're in long situations. They're trying to make these throws in training camp. You want to test the boundaries and push the boundaries a little bit, especially given the situations of third down. So you saw some of these quarterbacks try to fit some passes in there that probably they shouldn't have. But again, training camp, third down. So while you're going to hear and see a lot of content talk about the turnovers, keep that in mind when you start reading that stuff.
Yeah, definitely a lot of experimentation and pushing the ball downfield. And some of those were on the receiver, not on the quarterback, tipped balls that got picked off. Yeah, a couple things that direction. The competition is a great point, Mike, because I think some of the things where previously those were your like Jake Kumarow's, now seeing that it's, hey, how are they going to get Trent Sherfield and Khalil Shakir and Deontay Hardy onto the field when Dalton Kincaid is obviously going to have a huge presence? There's not going to be a lot of drop off. Right. And a lot of fans that, is it, I will still be frustrated in the asset if Kaiir Elam isn't the starter there, but it's not because it's one thing if a guy, you can't put him on the field and you have to find somebody else. It's different if there are other guys who are simply playing better where our floor is really high of who's going to be there. So I still want the asset that was used to end up being a starter, but it's not because he's Elam's out there making plays. He tipped 2 balls today. He had two nice pass breakups. He's playing well. It's just we have 3 guys all playing well who are all starting caliber. So I know a lot of people are going to, get frustrated that, hey, we want it to be that guy just because of what we use for it. And I understand that. But I think that it's important to see that it's because we have 3 starting caliber guys opposite Trey White.
Right. And when it comes to Shakir and Hardy, we talked about it yesterday. They are doing some different things with the 2 tight end groups where those guys are actually flankers and not slot guys. So there's going to be some different formations and things that we've never seen from this team to get guys, especially those smaller guys, shiftier guys on the field out of just a traditional slot role, but on the boundary a little more and moved around.
Well, and I think a lot of people forget, Stephon Diggs and sometimes Gabe Davis, but he plays a little bit more.
Right.
They don't play 100% of snaps. They play 85, 90% of snaps. So there are times where you need other guys to be outside boundary receivers. So seeing that usage and rotation was good.
Yeah.
For me, again, knock on wood, we've had good health. We haven't seen the medical team have to come out for anybody.
I mean, we did, but not for a player.
Yeah. There's been some challenges for people. But there's been a lot of things where the tempo has been good, the competition is good, seeing the talent out there showing themselves. Obviously, we wanted to see Kincaid shine. He's probably been even better than I expected. We want to see Hardy's usage. It's been really exciting. So the pieces that people were excited about, we're seeing a lot of those, and we want to see that continue. I want to see some of those new weapons show to be utilized. I wanted to see more pre-snap motion. It was more than I expected. We want, all these different pieces. We wanted to see more creativity. We've seen, a read option pop pass I've never seen before. We saw, literally, Gabe Davis behind, Josh Allen in the backfield. We've seen, different plays and usage. So all the boxes I'm looking to check, we're seeing so far. And that's all I can ask for is good health, creativity, good competition. We're seeing all those things so far. That's a successful camp for me. All right, guys. So thank you very much for checking it out. One last call for you guys. We just launched our new Cover One Pass membership. We've had a lot of new people sign up, which has been awesome. We really appreciate you guys. There's a ton of good access, really cool glossary videos. Some of the things we just went through about the creeper and simulated pressures.
That's up there.
Eric's done an entire series explaining what those terms are. I did a salary cap 101 series. And the best part is our Slack channel, being able to get in there with other like-minded Bills fans. I know a lot of people don't love everything going on social media right now and are looking for an outlet. It's a really nice contained community of informed, good Bills fans who want to talk about things. And there's still plenty of healthy debate and argument.
Oh, no doubt.
A lot more respectful than what you're going to find in a lot of other places. So we really encourage you. You'll see it in the show description here. You can sign up. You get an entire year for $60. That'll take you all the way through draft and free agency next year, the entire playoffs, everything here. So make sure you check it out. We've got a really cool new t-shirt design that looks nice, a decal. We'll get it all in the mail to you. But on behalf of Eric Turner and Mike Bunt, you've been listening to Cover One's training camp recap of day 2, and we are out.